Joining us right now, PR executive extraordinaire Hank Sheinkopf from Sheinkopf Communications. We've been talking all morning, Hank. This is Jake Novak in for Sid, and John is with us, and so is Fernando Mateo. All morning about how the packaging of this socialism, it's been packaged. You know all about PR and packaging and marketing. They've made it sound like something that people can vote for, but it's insane, isn't it?
Well, good morning, everyone. First of all, they're very smart. We're not dealing with people who are just a bunch of hacks. This is very well organized, very well thought through, and very directed with particular goals. They're doing a very good job. And what we see in these campaigns the day before yesterday is incompetence of old-style campaigning when what really is happening is that everything old is new again. What do I mean by that? Yes, social media matters, but being on the street matters. I'm the idiot that predicted that Mamdani, and John knows this, would be the mayor in January 2025. And I also said the campaigns would be run stupidly against him, which they were, because no one understood that you had to get on the street and that the old style of doing it mattered. So what they've combined is old style bossism plus new technology, and the end result is that New York is in very serious trouble.
Hank Sheinkopf, can you get a little bit more detailed about getting on the street? Are we talking about knocking on doors? Are we talking about rallies? What are we talking about?
Doors and rallies and creating excitement, and then also targeting. In the mayoral campaign, my first sense, and I said this to John on this program, was that they'd hit what we call 0 out of 4s, people who voted in 0 of the last 4 elections and who were under 35, which is exactly what they did. They turned down a new constituency that no one had thought about for a long time, and they were very successful at it. And then they hit doors. And I said at the time that they'd have 40,000 people on the street, which they did, and 100,000 on election day, which they did. So what we have is a lugubrious, old-style kind of politics meeting a new style of politics, which is entirely mission-directed, and frankly, it's working. Now, why is it working? Because fewer people really are turning out overall, but the people that are most excited by the kind of organizing they're doing are turning out with great intensity. And parenthetically, these are the very same people who destroyed neighborhoods, gentrified them, so people who used to live there where more blue-collar can't afford to live there, so they're revolting against themselves. It's kind of fascinating to watch.
Hank, Fernando Mateo here. Good morning.
Good
Hank,
morning.
what do we need to do to get people over 40, over 50, over 60 to come out and vote? What do we need to, pull the plug on this movement, on this socialist movement that's going on?
So first, I think, Fernando, first of all, good morning, and I think that's a very important question. Look, let's define what we're talking about here. Traditional political science, academic thinking. The social movement tends not to accomplish anything because once it does, it goes out of business. Classic examples are the Townsend movement, which wanted to create pensions for everybody. Social Security was passed, end of Townsend movement. You haven't heard of it. Prohibition and the things related to it. You create prohibition, suddenly the people around it disappear, the suffragettes and everybody else. That being said, as long as you create nothing but you have excitement on the street, you're going to have these kinds of things continue. And it's generally a reaction to the other side, i.e. more Trump, more chaos on the left. So as long as they're out there carrying on and doing nothing, it's going to continue. So maybe one of the solutions is for something to happen, or a real debate in public that is most onerous and that makes people who pay the bills say, wait a second. Or another way to do it is to organize, which means getting more people registered who are over 60 and who have a basic antipathy to the hateful group of people. Now, it doesn't stop with the Jews. It always begins with the Jews. This will never end with the Jews. And if you look at how they treated Puerto Ricans and how they, by the way, with the Puerto Rican Day Parade celebrations prior to the event, and how they've been treating other people, they particularly have a negative feeling toward black middle-income people who have created some wealth and maybe small property owners. I mean, that's very clear. So how do you organize these people? You have to start doing real street organizing, creating coalitions in neighborhoods, and doing it on a small scale and then a larger scale.
Hank, what bothers me the most is the complainers. Now everyone is complaining that the city's become socialist. You know what? We caused that. People that are 40, 50, 60, 70 years old that used to come out and vote year after year after year, they need to get out there again. Right. The message is these young people have a movement going, but we have experience, we have wisdom, We know what the damage is, right? So, listen, you're an expert in this field. You need to tell New York what they need to do to stop this brutal situation that's going on with the socialism and all that nonsense.
Well, it is dangerous. Look, when they build a lot of what he's talking about is talk. He's not accomplished very much, but the beauty and how smart he is, and he's very, very smart.
Brilliant.
Very, very dangerous. Very, very smart, very, very dangerous, like Hitler and Stalin. And what the stupid kids don't understand is that when you create these social movements to become political or achieve something, the first cadre of people who invented them or were part of them are just generally executed or removed. That's who they are. If you look at the Lenin, Stalin, even Hitler in 1934 killed the first line of defenders, which was the stormtroopers. In one night, he shot them.
Hank, but we can't shoot these people here. We're in New York City. We're in America.
But I'm saying is that older people understand the dangers. Younger people do not. And the way you deal with it is you start organizing on a smaller basis. Get blacks and Jews and Asians together in one place. Start talking to Latinos who have a vested interest in the economic system and who are just beginning to make their way. People who work for a living need to be told. Tell Albanian people they have a place to be, or those who remain in New York City, and try to stem the exodus. We're going to have an exodus from New York. Why? You always do when you have these cataclysmic political events that also have an economic bent to them.
But
what's going on right now.
Hank, you introduced an interesting angle of immigration there just for a moment there, targeted towards the people we want. I used to work in Cleveland in the mid-'90s. I returned just to take my daughter there for a summer internship a couple of years ago, and Cleveland is booming. And one of the reasons why it's booming is that they have all these Eastern European immigrants from these countries that have excellent engineering and tech education programs, like some of the countries you mentioned, but I'm talking also about like the former Czechoslovakia, places like Lithuania, places like Ukraine, and it's booming. And I wonder if that's a way. I mean, again, if we want people who know about socialism, bring the people who were suffered under it and now have been liberated from it in their countries, and maybe can bring that experience here.
Well, that's possible, but you have to create an entrepreneurial environment that creates competition between those who have never paid a price and are born a burden, and those who have an understanding. Part of what's going on here is you have a young generation of people who have never had a tough day overall, who have never had to go without a meal, who don't understand what it means to be on the street, who have never borne a burden or paid a price for the democracy and the environment we're living in, and furthermore, who stand to be the greatest inheritors of the most amount of wealth in the history of mankind over the next generation. They're also highly educated, and they think that they're owed something. I mean, if it's a choice between standing up and taking principle and having a $9 latte, they're going to do both of them. Okay?
I want to change the subject just for 1 second, Hank. The lead story of throughout the world, and we talked about it extensively, these terrible earthquakes in Venezuela, and how we know the American people, no matter who's in charge, no matter what's going on politically, will be there to help. President Trump, of course, pledging that, and we know that, and this isn't just an empty promise. We always show up to help. But from a public relations point of view, how do we get that message across to everyone how to do this right? I'm thinking of how the American people responded to the tsunami years ago back in in Thailand and things like. Can you talk a little bit about how this kind of public relations is a little bit different?
Sure, it's different. You have to get people to believe they belong to something. What we have is a group of people who somehow believe they don't belong to anything and they're owed something. We have not created or helped to create the civic culture in this country, and as a result of that, we have real problems because we don't have people who believe they have to serve or do anything. We don't have. We should be getting people into the Peace Corps. We should be telling people there's an incentive to go and teach in afternoons in schools and do something worthwhile. And that we're not doing that. We're not saying to people go serve the nation. A lot of us, and maybe on this call, have either been, in the service or been police officers or been teachers or done something that creates some societal good. So you have a generation of people that have created no societal good except to complain, and they believe that that's the civic culture. We've got to restore the civic culture in New York City as well. Tell these kids if they want to protest, great. Go protest in an afternoon in an inner city school and teach young kids how to read, okay? Go register people to vote who aren't like you. Go spend some time on the street and you do youth work. I mean, but they're not. We're not telling them they have an obligation. And so long as they don't have an obligation, They have nothing to do but spend time complaining.
And
complaining about what? About what they don't have or should have.
Hank, when I was running for mayor, do you remember what I pushed? More vocational schools. You know?
Well, I agree, John.
Teach
Look,
people how to work. You know?
well, one of the beauties of Bill Clinton's thinking, you may recall, and there was a time when I worked for him, and you know him certainly very well, is that he believed that community colleges ought to be entirely tax deductible. Teaching people how to have real skill and helping them to note that there is some value to that work would go a long way to dispending this socialist nonsense. Why? Because you give them a reason to live.
PR genius.
And to feel productive.
PR genius Hank Sheinkopf speaking with us and maybe making a case for a new kind of draft in America, not just military, but many different choices. We're going to take a break.
We used to have the Peace Corps.
Yeah, and we still do, but people don't rush to it. But I think that if you gave every high school graduate in America that they have to do at least 1 year of service, you can choose military, you can choose Peace Corps, you can choose Teach for America. Give them 5 or 6 choices and get the unions out of the way because that's what they stopped. Bill Clinton wanted to do that with AmeriCorps. You remember, the union stopped him. But Hank Sheinkopf, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Hank.
And we're going to be right back.
Keep fighting for us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Sid and Friends in the Morning. You can hear Sid and Friends in the Morning weekday mornings at 6. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?